Well, I am Dr. Lum Frundi. I am a pediatrician and founder of Generational Wellbeing, where I help busy mothers create sustainable, healthy habits for themselves and their families so they can start making that change from disease to wellness. So, joining me today is Dr. Bonny Drago, who's going to introduce herself.
So I'm Dr. Drago. I initially did my pediatric residency and then got board certified and then actually practiced in general pediatrics in the outpatient setting for a couple of years and then went back and did a fellowship in peds critical care and now working in an inpatient setting. But I do have experience in taking care of, healthy as well as sick kids all the way from 0 to 18, and I'm dual board certified in both peds and peds critical care. And I definitely have a keen interest in the overall health and, the chronic problems that children face. So that's what we are here to do today.
Absolutely. So you've seen both sides of it, the preventive side and the really, really sick kids
Right,
as to what the complications could imply, right?
right.
Okay. Yeah. So which is why we're here today to talk about different ways to create habits to prevent obesity, really keying down on childhood obesity as we're both pediatricians taking care of kids 0 to 18. And as we know, obesity is an epidemic right now. So
Right.
can you tell us what the current statistics are?
Wow. I mean, as everyone knows, obesity is definitely a huge problem and definitely, in adults as well as in kids. And right now, I think it's about, from the last AAP article that came out, it was about 14.4 million children and adolescents in United States alone that are classified as overweight and obese. And an interesting thing is that, when they looked at the data, it was in the 1960s, that was about 5% of the US, children were classified as being overweight or obese. And when they looked at it in 2017, 2018, it had tripled to like 19%. So this current statistics of 14 million, obese and overweight children actually is 19%. So obviously, things are keep going in the wrong direction here. And so obesity is definitely now the most common chronic pediatric disease. That's what it was classified in the recent AAP article and guideline that came out. So it's definitely a big problem. And, so we definitely have
Yeah.
to do something.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even though with the current awareness of what we need to do, unfortunately, it looks like we're just consistently just climbing up in the wrong
Right,
direction. So what is
right.
the impact of this number as you're seeing in
I mean,
now
it's
in our current
huge because,
atmosphere?
before people used to think that obesity in children doesn't really have too much of an effect like adults in terms of developing chronic diseases. But I think now it's becoming more obvious that, it has a lot of effect on cardiovascular health, leading to actually the most common one that people think about is the insulin resistance and leading to type 2 diabetes, which we are seeing more and more of in kids, and then high blood pressure, the dyslipidemias like high cholesterol, triglyceride, your non-alcoholic fatty liver, leading to pancreatitis, gallstones, like a whole host of diseases. And then let's not forget the effect on the hormonal imbalances that it can cause as well, like in, the hyperandrogenism, leading to polycystic ovary-like symptoms. So a lot of different chronic problems arise from obesity and overweight, and things like also like obstructive sleep apnea, which is such a common thing in kids too, when, you're having the snoring and the apneas, and that leads to, school problems and fatigue during the day. So it's a lot of different chronic things can happen. And then the other thing about childhood obesity is that a lot of these kids, their BMI keeps going up and they end up with obesity in adulthood. So unless we do something to reverse this or help them, help the families, this is going to continue. And these obese children, it had started somewhere, when the adult, people that are so obese, it obviously started in childhood. And so that's, I think another statistic that was very curious was that if these 2017, 2018 trends continue, didn't it say like 35% of people, of these kids, by the time they were 35 would be obese? So, I mean,
Right.
that's a big number. So,
Uh,
I mean, it definitely has
yeah.
a huge impact, and all these chronic medical problems that these kids end up having, it's a huge healthcare burden. I mean, it's right now being classified as the most common chronic disease, and that's going to have a huge cost on healthcare down the road as well, not just, on the family,
Absolutely.
but the whole system. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
think I
So
think it's a huge thing, and that something needs to be done.
right. So I'm hearing both immediate and long-term effects,
Right,
right? As in the
right,
kids, it's not that when they get to adulthood, they're seeing those problems. We're seeing it right now, right? Even in childhood, right?
right.
Uh,
And let's
right.
not forget the effect on their mental health as well, and the psychological issues that can happen. Depression, anxiety, all of those kind of stem from the fact that obesity carries a stigma. Unfortunately, kids can develop low self-esteem. So overall, it's not a good thing. And I
Right.
think that's what this AAP article was stressing, was that trying to look at it from a whole, picture, and not to like sort of to destigmatize it, but also let's not forget that this is a problem that needs to be tackled, and that the families and the children do need to be helped, but from a position of empathy and kindness, but knowing that this carries a huge cost and health risks for the kid, and we do need to talk about it.
Right. So what do you think if you have a parent who says, "Well, it's my genes. There's there's nothing I can do about it." How could you speak to the effects of genetics versus environment as contributing to the problem of obesity?
Right. I mean, I know nowadays the big thing is pushed towards that it's all, a huge part is genetics, and hence, the medications have become very, prevalent, as we know. But again, if you look at that AAP guideline, I mean, the curious fact was that in the 60s, it's the genetic makeup, I'm sure, hasn't changed that much, but it
Right.
was the percentage of the obesity was like 5% in kids. And in the 2000 it changed to 19%. So why is it keep
Right.
going up, right? It's the same thing. And then when they looked at yes, genetics plays a role along with all these other things. So obesity is multifactorial. It's not just genetics, which is a small portion. A large part is the environmental, the socioeconomic status, with the parental education. So there is a whole host of things which go to making this a problem. And I think that when they looked at the genetics, I think it's about 5 to 10% is truly a genetic disease, where you have a single gene defect leading to things like your Cushing's or hypothyroidism, like true diseases which causes
Right.
obesity as part of the disease. Like Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, like those are very rare, and like Prader-Willi is a common one, right? In pediatrics, we can see
Right.
that. And I think that was about like less than 10% cases where it was a true one gene which was causing obesity. The rest, 90%, are classified as idiopathic, which is, yes, there might be some genetic factors in the sense that having that gene, might predispose you to obesity given the right environment. And I think that is the key, that all these years, I'm sure these people still carried that gene, but the reason that obesity wasn't as prevalent is because the environment and the diet and all of those things was the right way. Now, if you have a susceptibility to becoming obese, and then you are in that environment, I think that's where the genetics plays a role. So we shouldn't just say, oh, because it's in my family that I'm doomed to be obese. I think that's not the message. Like, yes, it might be in your family, and yes, you might have a predisposition to it, but we're not talking about obesity as a true genetic disease, like something like, or a disease like like insulin deficient, like type 1 diabetes. It's not something like that where, oh, I don't have the insulin, so I'm just, I'm going to have to get replacement insulin all my life. Obesity is a much more complex thing, where I think the environment and the lifestyle still plays a huge role. And yes, if you have a predisposition, you will go on to develop obesity if you're not doing something within that framework. That's the impression I've had all along. And looking at that article too, that's what I felt. What's your thoughts on this?
Absolutely on the same page. It is a complex disease, and because it's affected by not only your genes, this environment. There's so many things that play into it. That's what makes it complex, and that's why when it comes to managing it. You can't just look at one factor, right? We
Right.
can't just say, oh, I've tried a diet and it works. Oh, I've tried this and it didn't work per se. You have to look at the whole picture because there's so many things in play when it comes to the management of it, which
Yeah,
is why we're
and
seeing.
and the environment, like so much of this, like why is it that there is so much racial disparity, and why is it that the socioeconomic? Because I mean, a lot of those kids belong to poor socioeconomic status, and obesity, it's strange, obesity in this country or in developed countries, it's obesity is more a problem affecting the poor socioeconomic status much more compared to the affluent society. Whereas when I grew up in India, it was the opposite. Like the poor socioeconomic status, actually, the people were thin and underweight and malnourished because of food scarcity, right? Because we didn't have processed food and easy access to junk food. Whereas the obesity was more common in the affluent society. Why? Because they had more easy access to food and butter and all of those things. And so it was the opposite. Whereas here, as you can see, obesity is disproportionately affects the poorer socioeconomic status, the people with lower education, where the maternal education is low, etc. And it's why it has to be because of the easy access to the ultra processed foods, the ultra processed junk foods, the fast foods, and it's actually more expensive to buy fresh fruits and vegetables than to buy the junk food. And so that has got to be a reason, some of it, why the things are reversed here. So it's not food scarcity as such, it's the opposite. It's eating the wrong type of foods, and it's and it's kind of lack of access, unfortunately. The disparity, I would say, and this racial inequalities and stuff that it plays a role is because of lack of access. A lot of those under-resourced communities don't even have a proper grocery store which probably has fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't have a safe playground where their kids can go out and do physical exercise like the more affluent suburban communities have, who have, and their parents are able to afford to take them to different things and participate in sports. So yes, when we say obesity is multifactorial, a lot of it is not just the people's fault that they are sitting and eating fast food. If it's a single mother on a low income, her only option probably is to, with the limited money, it's probably is to eat the McDonald's versus trying to get fresh produce and cook it and whatnot. So I think if you have to make a change, it's probably make it more easily available, like the proper foods and the proper nutrition to those kids, so we could tackle this. I feel like rather than pushing medications on everyone, I think we need to more focus on how can we actually get them the tools which will prevent them from getting obese in the first place, right? I
Right,
might be
right.
unpopular for saying this, but I don't like pushing medications unnecessarily.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, now, if you have, let's say we have a busy mother listening now who's like, yeah, I hear it's a complex. I have to work on my health, my eating habits, and all the other things. Do you have any tips that you can give to that person, where to start? Like, what can I do right now with what I have to start incorporating those healthy eating options you've talked about in my diet and my child's diet?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would definitely say start with your own pediatrician. A lot of pediatricians are now tackling this. So I would say definitely talk to them, see if they have any kind of, resources available to offer you, any kind of education, or like if they have access to a dietitian and things like that would be definitely a good place. So first of all, I think you have to identify there is a problem, right? If you're not even, the change has to come from within you. The desire to change has to come from within you. A pediatrician or a doctor telling you that your BMI is above the 85th percentile, hence your child is obese, you have to make some change, that's going to go over. So you have to realize, first of all, that there is a problem, that I would like to make a change, and then look for the resources, and starting with your pediatrician is a good place. But then again, I would say a small tip would be, I think this was part of the AAP's guidelines, is the 5-2-1-0 method, where aim for like 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. It's something simple to remember, because otherwise it can be overwhelming. Like, where am I even going to start, right? So 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. Limit your screen time to less than 2 hours a day, because screen time plays a huge role in creating obesity because people are just eating it's basically a sedentary lifestyle. And I struggle with screen time in my own kids. My kids are 12 and 9, and on the weekends it is a struggle trying to get them off that screen. But all the time we have to remember, like, try to aim for less than 2 hours, because not only for overall health, but limiting these obesity and whatnot. So 5-2, and then 1 is 1 hour of vigorous or moderate exercise, because physical activity, obviously, that's not going to necessarily help you lose weight, but it's good for overall fitness and it's good to maintain, your weight. So 5-2-1, and then 0 is the zero sugary drinks. So cut that out of your grocery. I always tell parents, I'm like, if you can make one change, probably is when you go grocery shopping, do not buy those Capri Suns and Kool-Aids and sugary drinks and Gatorade and sodas. I used to, when I was doing PICU fellowship, when we were going on night call, I would take a can of Coke with me. It was Diet Coke, which probably now we know is even worse. But I would take a can of Coke with me every time on my nights, and then drink the Dr. Pepper from the cafeteria. But then one day I listened to this thing on NPR about, even the diet sodas actually being worse for you or whatever. So I just decided I was going to stop. And I cut out buying the sleeves of the soda cans. I used to have a Sprite and a Coke, like the 12 pack in my fridge at all times. And I would always be drinking the soda. And that was the one change I made, was cutting out the soda drinking. And I think if you want to start one step towards improving your overall family's health, is to cutting out that. Start with that at least, right? So it's a 5-2-1-0. So focus on these things and start small. No need to feel overwhelmed. No need to feel like it's all or nothing. And it's overall, I think it's a lifestyle modification. Kids don't need to be on diets. We're not talking about putting kids on diet. That's a wrong approach, right? We do need to eat healthy food. Kids are growing, but the focus is on eating the proper, healthy, nutritious food most of the time. Kids are kids. My kids have ice cream and they have, Oreo cookies and all kinds of stuff, because my kids are not going to tolerate if I all the time push the healthy foods. So It's a balance. So majority of the time I try to give them their 3 meals, or majority of the time has protein, vegetables and stuff like that. But they do eat their desserts, and they're eating, my son especially, he likes really bad things. He's in middle school and he likes like hot Cheetos and Takis and things like that. But I don't buy those. So, if he wants, he buys it sometimes from his allowance, and then he realized real quick that his allowance is going away and buying that. So he stopped, so he learned his own lesson. So I said, I'm not buying it. When I go grocery shopping, I'm buying and a few treats I will buy, but I'm not going to buy a bag of Takis. I mean, if you really want that, yeah, you can get that. So I think that, and then the other thing would be sleep, which is an overlooked factor in kids nowadays, because lack of sleep leads to more fatigue during the day. So you don't feel like exercising, and then it leads to some hormonal imbalances, which promotes more eating. There was, that study that showed that there was some deficiency or whatever in the leptin, which led to more craving and eating. And I know how I feel like when I haven't slept a good night, you're more prone to snacking or something or the other, right? During the day, like, just try to stay awake. So I think promoting more sleep in kids is a good thing. And then trying to focus on the 5-2-1-0 method. That would probably be my tip for the moms if you're just starting out. And then modeling the same behavior. Like, don't expect your kids to eat healthy if you are not, or at least trying to make a change.
Right. We just say our kids do what they see us doing, not what we tell them. Right.
Yeah. So we have to make the change ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. So overall, I'm just going to recap what you said, starting out with the eating part of it. We're controlling our environment by controlling what we're bringing into it. So even if you're in a position where, yes, I want to do or make the changes for my family or for my household, we can start by controlling the immediate environment within our household. That means that start by cutting out all the sugary beverages, because even though they're targeted as the healthy options, as maybe 100% fruit juice, like most people would say, or even if it's sports beverage or Diet Coke or soda like you used to do, they all still contain those high sugars that are not working in our favor. Right.
Yeah, leave it as a treat. Like my son he loves Coke and different types of sodas. So when we go out to eat, which is not very often, maybe once a week, even, not even, or like when we are on vacation, then I'm fine. I'm like, fine. With your dinner, he'll order a Sprite or Coke, and I'm okay with that. Because again, everything in moderation. We are not trying to be, monks here. But as long as our overall focus is majority of the time, we are trying to eat the natural whole foods, more fruits and vegetables and things like that. Once in a while, if you do that, it's fine. When you try to restrict
Absolutely.
it too much and when you put yourself on a diet, then it's going to fail, because after a while, you're going to rebel and not want to do it.
Right, because this is a sustainable lifestyle
Right.
journey we're dealing with. It's not a diet where we're doing stuff here and
No.
there. We're trying to make changes that are flexible
Right.
because as much, changes will come in throughout different seasons of life. And as your children grow up, you notice too that with different age ranges, the way you tackle it is different. For example, with your middle school kid, you can give them that responsibility. Yes, I have in my household, I am not going to have this, but you can go ahead and use your allowances. Then you start dealing with reward and consequences, and they can learn that way as opposed to just pressing on with the pressure on them, like you're not having it at all, too.
Right.
So it's really important when you're dealing with the kids that you have to really be flexible because at this, we're really not doing anything that is so stressful or something that's not sustainable. The goal is the sustainability in all of it too.
And I think the constant educating and talking about it. And the other thing too, I find nowadays, people like to maybe give in to their kids more than, because it is a struggle a lot of times, trying to do the right thing, and it's not the popular thing, with the kids. Sometimes it's hard because you're going to have a battle again. Like when my son asks for, a Gatorade, like, I'm not buying it. You're not doing any sports right now. Like, what's the need for the Gatorade? But every time you have to say a no, it is unpleasant, right? Like, who wants to keep saying no to their kids? But I know in my head, this is the right thing to do. You have to be unpopular. Like, I'm not here to be your friend all the time, because I know what is right. And eventually I'm hoping he will learn that message, that try to make the right choices himself. And that is what we want, is to educate all the time. But to educate, the mom herself needs to be educated as well. Now, it's easy for us to say, we are pediatricians, we have all this education and everything else. So obviously we are trying to make the right choice. Like, it would be a shame if me as a pediatrician, I wasn't trying to do the right thing for my kids, when I tell everything to the parents. But it is important for the other moms to have some more education so that they can make the right choices for their families.
Right,
Because if the
absolutely.
mom is the one who's deciding the food, who's buying the groceries and doing all of these for the, and so if she has that knowledge, she can make those right choices.
Right. And we're doing it as a family too, right?
Right.
It's not about one
It's not just
person
the
versus
kids doing this and I'm sitting here having all my snacks while watching TV. Then that's that's not fair, and then you're not modeling the right behavior. So my kids
right.
see that I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables all the time. In fact, they always say, you don't have to be so healthy. Like, my son says that, like, we can't be like you. So they know that I eat fruits and vegetables a lot. And so hopefully, I'm hoping that as they get older, they will have imbibed some of that messaging.
Oh yes, it usually transfers because we end up eating the way our parents ate. Whether we like it or not, we find ourselves going back to what is familiar, to what we know, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to give you an example, one time we went to a frozen yogurt place, where they put the toppings, and um, I didn't say anything. I was watching what my son was going to do, and he chose blueberries,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What?" I was completely taken aback. And he did put some gummies and other things, but he did choose to put some blueberries in there, and I was like, "Oh!" I was really happy, and I kind of praised him for that. So I was like, okay, good. So some of the stuff that I keep talking about is getting in there somewhere, so that he actually,
Right.
made that right choice. And that was a couple of years ago when he was younger, and he did do that on his own, like without me prompting, because I was like, I've given up. Like, this is a yogurt place, you can pick whatever you want. I gave him full, freedom, but he himself chose to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I think it's the education, 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 like constantly, and then remembering always to try and do the right thing. Because
right.
in the end, we want the overall health and well-being, of our
Right.
kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you touched a little bit on exercise or activity, as in 1 hour of activity. And I
Mhm.
wanted to just expand on that a little bit to say when we say exercise activity, you want to make it fun. It doesn't mean you have to be in the gym 1 hour, vigorous activity, 1 hour a day of exercise. It could be running around in the park with your kids. Just make it fun and enjoyable, because the overall goal of exercise is not the focus on the weight itself, but more so the energy, the mental clarity, and the connection with your family as well.
Right. Yeah, because I don't belong to a gym. A lot of times in the weekends, I'll try to take my kids out for a walk or go for a hike. It's more, I think, also incorporating activity in your daily life as well, trying to, you know, move more, sit less. That is the messaging. It's not, I think people think that exercise meaning you have to be in the gym and trying to lose weight. That's not the idea. Leading a less sedentary lifestyle, I think that is the key. Like, even gardening, walking, cooking, any of that is actually movement. You can even walk around inside your own house. And kids doing PE, that counts. And if they're doing any sports activities, that counts. But as long as by minimizing just the sitting around watching the screen all the time or playing video games and being more active, I think that goes towards the same overall goal of more action, more energy, instead of just sitting and being a couch potato essentially.
Right, right. Yeah. And then finally, sleep too. You need that sleep to help with the energy as well as with your
Yeah,
hormonal regulation.
right.
That still goes to contribute to healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think the fatigue, and so sleep was one of the things that was pointed out in that study as one of the things that should be modified, and I think children under the age of 13 was something like 12 hours, which can be a lot. Like I told that to my kids because we were clearly not getting 12 hours. So, and so I heard my son talking like when he was playing video games, and I was like, screaming from my room saying, "Oh, we need to cut it down now. We have to go to bed." And he's like, "Oh, my mom just read the study, and now she wants to." I heard him saying that to his friend. He's like, "My mom read the study on obesity, and now she wants us to sleep."
I was like, you're not getting your 10
I know. I'm like,
hours
"You're
of
not getting your
sleep.
12 hours. We need to go to bed now." Yeah. So
Yeah,
just keeping it
yeah.
simple, you know, try to make some small changes in the overall diet. And we're definitely not talking about putting kids on a diet. It's overall lifestyle changes. And by focusing on more whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, you can do no wrong eating fruits and vegetables. And I think filling up your plate with more of that and cutting out the ultra processed food, I think that would make a big difference. Cutting out the ultra processed, like those sugary cereals, no good at all. Rather eat a piece of toast with a whole wheat toast with butter is much better than having a bowl of sugary cereal in the morning. So cutting out that, cutting out some of the screen time, incorporating more exercise, and then sleeping better, I think will get us a long way, rather than just focusing on medications.
Well, yes, absolutely. Some really, really great tips. And thank you for sharing those tips with us today. For our viewers who want to hear more or find out more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
So I'm here on Instagram. I'm on I think my username is at momtalkpeds. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm on TikTok also as momtalkpeds. And I also started a YouTube channel not too long ago. It's Dr. Bonny. And so I make some longer form content on different pediatric topics, as well as health and wellness and things like that. So yeah, just trying to, spread the message and things that I strongly believe in. So that's the reason why I started doing this, was more just to kind of promote these things and hopefully educate, more people about this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all you do. It's much needed, as we can see, it's a pandemic that's rising not only for the obesity itself. We're seeing the parallel rise in mental health care crisis. So they're all linked. So the voices, we have to join on and put the word out there and empower parents that we have a choice in our lifestyle. Making one change at a time can make a huge difference overall, right? Where we can
Right.
start changing the statistics from the rise and bringing it back down from that 18% where it is and slowly back to where it was in the 60s, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I
Right.
know medicine right now, the anti-obesity medicines are getting a huge push, but in the end, again, you can make a big difference by incorporating these environmental and lifestyle changes. It doesn't have to be, everything doesn't need to be treated, with medication. And yes, they are there, for when you're trying to do everything and or you have reached the point where nothing is helping, maybe getting a jump start by doing those. So the AAP has put it out in that article about the medicines, under, I think, up 12 and older now, they're
Yeah.
saying it's
Yeah.
okay to use it and stuff like that, and then even surgery. But I think our focus is more on the aspect of just the lifestyle modifications, the stuff like that, right? I mean, medicines are there. We know they're, approved for use. But before going there, I think we need to, and even medications just alone is not going to work. I think even the AAP guideline clearly says it's medicine in conjunction with lifestyle changes and environmental changes. So those are the biggest pillars. If we can change those, the medicine and other stuff is there. You can use it if we need to. That is my personal opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you all for watching. Again, I'm Dr. Lum. Send me a DM if you have any questions or other topics you would like to hear about. And you can also follow me on Facebook at Generational Wellbeing. Thank you again, and
Thank you.
goodbye.
Yep. And see you. Bye.
Bye.